Welcome to Stump the Pastor. Today's question comes from Pam in Clemson, South Carolina. She asks, my kids once asked, why did God send a meteor to kill the dinosaurs? Well, thank you for the question, Pam. This is the kind of question that arises when we get an idea about who we think God is, and then we follow that idea to its conclusion that seems to then at times contradict some other idea we have about who God is. And that's a good thing because that makes us consider all the different ways in which we know and encounter the presence of God. The question that your kids raised asks why a benevolent creator who creates out of love would then destroy that creation without logical cause. This dynamic forces us to raise other questions for which there are no good answers. For example, did the dinosaurs do something evil that forced God to destroy them? Some have even said that the dinosaurs were God's first attempt at creation. They kind of view it as a practice run. The dinosaurs didn't turn out exactly the way God wanted in this line of thought, so God had to wipe them out and start over with humans. Well, this is actually a common practice in how we develop a theology. We say to ourselves, this idea, this understanding seems to be true, so does this lead to then that conclusion? Do you see how all these questions originate? Why did God create the world? Well, you see, that is one of the first questions with which the ancient people ruminated, because it sets into motion everything that we think we know about God. The two creation stories, for example, in Genesis, one in chapter 1 and one in chapter 2, are examples of how ancient people mused about God's intention in creation. And we have honestly grappled with that question ever since. And when we look at those two creation stories, for example, independently from each other, we see that this is a question that has been stumping humanity from the beginning. And they didn't always come to the same conclusions. Well, this really shouldn't be too surprising to those of us who have been considering all the ways that we get stumped by God's grace. We can't make it make sense the ways we want it to make sense. It is one of the great paradoxes of faith. Or put another way, it's one of the biggest reasons we get stumped a lot. I want to suggest to you that it is in the moments that we recognize that we are stumped that we have an opportunity to receive new revelation. It is in the moment where we recognize that we don't know that we have to decide what we trust. So this reality of being stumped is what I use to take me back to my starting points. Whenever I come to answers that don't make sense or that don't make grace, I start again. And I trust grace because that is the closest reality I have found that takes me to the heart of God. For me, when I return to that starting point, then I don't have to make God the source of destruction or the source of evil. If God is grace, then the possibilities of evil, death, hate might exist. They just don't come from God. So here's what I would say to your kids, Pam. God didn't send the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. Meteors are simply part of the freedom of creation. Grace is what we have available to us when living that freedom wounds us. See, without the possibility of harm, there can be no true freedom. And with true freedom, we have the ability to choose grace as our foundational reality. Or we can choose the idea that God kills dinosaurs, or lots of other ideas. But this is really the intriguing part for me. You and I have the choice to decide where our stumps take us. We can be dinosaur killer, or we can be the embodiment of grace. We get to choose. See you next time on Stump the Pastor. Well, there you go, Pam. Let me know what your kids think about this idea. And if any of you have ideas or thoughts about your theology, about God, about how we got to where we are, send them to me on Stump the Pastor. The address is on the bottom of your screen. See you next week.